Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sports Tech All Stars podcast. I just got done having a great chat with Andy from Vizrt. He's the head of sports there, somebody who's been working in the sports broadcasting, sports media landscape for quite a while, over 15, 17 plus years, I believe. And he's been in his role as the head of sports at Vizrt for a couple of years. Vizrt is involved in live production and graphics for live content from news to sports and other areas. And Andy talks about his journey in the sports industry and also all the cool stuff that Vizrt is up to. It's been a really interesting series talking to various people about what's happening in innovation when it comes to broadcasting. There is so much, as Andy goes on to explain. We also get into why we believe there is so much happening at this present moment in the broadcasting innovation space. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. And Andy, so first of all, I always want to know the origin story of the guest that I'm speaking with. So why don't you tell me yours? What brought you to Vizrt and what do you do there?
Well, my entry into the broadcast world into VizRT is one of fortune and luck, I think. So I joined VizRT 2.5 years ago, but previously I was with Delta Tray, the sports technology
For a
company,
long time, I saw.
14 years. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's really where
it's
I
a
started
minute.
my journey. Yeah, it was a good innings. Really where I started my journey, and as I said, I kind of fell into this industry completely by accident. Some friends of mine spotted an advert back in 2006, I think it was, to help Delta Trade gather statistics for the Rugby World Cup in France. And my mates were like, "You like rugby? You should go for this." And I had no idea that this world existed. The broadcast world, the sports data world. So I applied. I didn't get the job. Failed spectacularly in the interview and the test, but got a taste of what they were doing. Reapplied for a few other football jobs, and sort of came through from an operations, started off a graphics operator, and then project manager, operations manager, before moving to the commercial side of the business. And then, yeah, 2.5 years ago, VizRT knocked on the door and said, "Do you fancy coming and working for us?" Delta Trade were a user of VizRT, so I knew them well. And I popped across to VizRT, and I now head up their sports side, sports commercial side, as head of sport. So it's been a fantastic journey. I love the industry, and I'm very, very fortunate and lucky that I found it when I did, and I owe my mates at the University of Exeter a couple of beers whenever I see them for it. So it's
Well,
been a good
if,
journey.
if if it's been 17 years, I hope they're not waiting
Yeah,
or
no,
thereabouts.
no. Whenever I see them, they
Right.
ask me how it's going, and I go, yeah, there's one particular guy who spotted it. It's
Perfect.
yeah, very fortunate. But it's trying to get other people from sort of from the university side, sort of grassroots into the industry is one of my growing interests and passions. Um,
Super. And I love to connect to that kind of story because yeah, but we'll talk about it some more. But like
yeah,
you have people who work in this industry and we're fortunate enough to like fans first, and you like sports,
yeah.
and to get the opportunity to work in it is a great thing. Have you always been in London? Have you been about and moved around within the UK or elsewhere?
Yeah, I've mainly been based in London. I moved to Manchester for 5 years
Hmm.
when Delta Ray worked with BBC Sport, and they moved all of their facilities up to Salford and set up where they are now. And I moved up there to help oversee that from a Delta Ray side. Got my first taste of augmented reality up there when BBC Sport installed their AR studio in 2011, I think it was. And then, so they're 5 years, and then moved back down south to London, not too far afield.
As somebody who's been in the industry for a minute, you clearly, I mean, you've spent a long time, and I'm really curious to hear from you about your perspective, the evolution of how you've seen, let's say, broadcast tech and things like the origin of mixed reality and where it stands now, and the layers that you interact with. But first, I want to talk about VizRT for some of our listeners or viewers who don't know what the company does. Can you summarize that? What exactly is the problem you solve, and how do you solve it?
Yeah, sure. So Vizrt is traditionally known as a graphics company, but it is very much so much more. We do deal with graphics and video content, but really with the acquisition of New Tech back in 2018, we've expanded that portfolio. We're now dealing in live production through TriCaster, 3Play, sort of our VizConnect tools. So really, we are working with the full end-to-end spectrum of content creators, from the pro AV side and the influencers all the way through to the big sports broadcasters and federations. So from a, what are we trying to do? What is RT trying to offer? It's essentially to keep these content creators, of whom there are now many, many more than when I started, creating engaging content, whether that be through traditional linear, or whether that's now sort of the new outlets of digital and social, where so much content is being created and engaged. And that's either just, visually stunning graphics, which is what engages most fans, virtual studios, augmented reality, whether that be in studio or on the pitch. And, it's very important because we ran a survey, I think, middle of last year, to try and understand what sports fans and viewers were really after. And the response was overwhelming, and, across all demographics, that I think around 70% of the respondents said they are more engaged when they see good graphics, augmented reality, good telestration. So it shows that what we do is still really important. And in addition, there are tighter budgets, so we're trying to help our customers produce more for less. Content is king, as the old saying goes. So how are our broadcasters creating more content for the same budgets or less budgets? We produce or give them tools to try and do that, whether that be through automation or the use of cloud. And just the ability to get that content in, manage that content through a MAM system that we have, and just create more, and then help our broadcasters and our customers reach those new audiences, those changing ways of viewing, whether that be, again, the mobile first production, 9x16 productions, which we've been doing quite a lot of, giving the broadcasters that technology and that broad scope of technology to really utilize an ecosystem to service all the different audiences and demographics that they now have to reach to keep subscribers and keep eyeballs.
Yeah, vertical broadcasting is a thing now, right? All sports needs to find ways. Interesting. So a couple of minutes on the history of the company, because I saw somewhere it's 25 plus years old. So you guys have been around the block. Did it start in sports, or were you like in news or something else, and then sports was added later?
Started in news. Started in Norway. A couple of guys in, I think it was TV2. Saw a gap where the graphics were very flat, they were very boring, and they said, we can do better. We can create a 3D graphics render engine, and that's what they did. They created the first 3D graphics render engine out of Norway and Bergen. That's where our spiritual home is. And it's really grown from there through organic growth and development and innovation. Vizrt were the first ones to develop a virtual studio, for instance, so which is not very well known, but we've been there at the forefront of innovation for a good number of years. We've acquired, cleverly and successfully, Ardome, which is a media asset management system, which we now do a lot with the major broadcasters, and also develop that into a sports-specific media asset management system. We acquired LibroVision from a telestration perspective, which has been very successful. And recently as well, we've also acquired New Tech, as I mentioned, so really adding that Pro AV side and the partner side. And then a couple of years ago, we acquired Flowix from HTML5 graphics side. So really it's grown through just the talent that we have within Vizrt, developing our render engine, developing augmented reality, being the forefront of all of that and the virtual studios, to then acquiring, embracing cloud, very much working very early doors on the cloud piece. And now we're in 2024, and we're starting to delve into the trends that AI bring and sports data, and so we're continually innovating, continually looking at what the market is doing, and trying to be at the forefront.
While splashing some Norwegian cash, it sounds like, and active in the acquisition market. Also a great sign that that's a kind of a growing company, and you're kind of elevating your profile as well, offering newer solutions. Who is your client in, let's say, your ideal client that you sell most to? Is it the actual rights holder? Is it a broadcaster? Is it, let's say, in regions? The reason I ask also is because I saw on your social feed, for example, you're doing Olympics work somewhere. You're doing, I think it was the Wimbledon for Amazon Prime I saw, and then there's the Hungarian Grand Prix for somewhere else. So that, which is region specific. So you're, I guess, not working with the main rights holder always directly. So yeah, maybe just walk me through within sports. Sorry, I should say. So now bringing it into the sports context, who are your main clients?
It is a broad spread, not to get out of answering the question, but it really is. If we start at the sort of top end, if you will, with the major broadcasters, the ones who are buying the rights, and looking to then, produce engaging wraparound content. We work very closely with them, and it's important to say that we are a global organization. We have, I think, 16, a good number of R&D offices. I think we have 20 odd offices, so we are dotted across the globe to service all these global partners and broadcasters. So broadcasters are very important to us, and we work with them either direct or through our channel partners. And then we also work with the sports federations directly, whether that be the major organizing bodies or whether that be the sports federations themselves, to create the world feed graphics or to create digital content or look at ways of changing the way they do production, use of cloud, etc. And then we work very, very closely with our partners. The partner network that we have is really important to us. We have a really good group of sports service providers that we work very closely with, that then in turn create brilliant content on our platform and provide that to the federations. This Austin Elliott and Delta Tray and Giraffic, Champion Data, Swiss Timing. These are the guys who take our solution and provide all of the on-screen graphics and the augmented reality and kind of what you see around the major events, and they do a terrific job. Really, they do. So often we're one step removed. We're sat back and giving these guys our technology, and then they're the ones who are going on and creating the wonderful graphics. And then, as I said, with the acquisition of NewTek, we then suddenly had a whole new audience to look at. So we work with our channel partners very closely, who then in turn work with other broadcasters and also stadiums and venues and college sports. In the US, that's a huge market. So really, the client base is very wide, and we try and service them all in a unique way, in an individual way.
Interesting. And that's exactly the thought that I had, because this is a solution that anybody can plug into. Let's say different types of buyer profiles can plug into whatever they're doing. Last one on this, you already mentioned like various types of buyer profiles. There are a bunch of logos on your website, on your socials. I mentioned a couple of names. I saw testimonials from like the PGA Tour and the NFL and various others, Warner Brothers, Discovery, for example. Any specific use cases within sports that you want to highlight, that you want to talk about? Just to set the context like a little bit sharper here.
Yeah, sure. No, I think, as I mentioned earlier, one of the problems that we've been trying to solve with our broadcasters is how to engage different ways of consuming content. And one of our most recent successes, and it's been a really great partnership, is with that of UEFA, and working with the UEFA performance analysis team there to create engaging telestration for digital and social. The tool is traditionally been used in the broadcast field very successfully, but UEFA really grabbed this and said, you know what, we can create some really great content for digital and social, which they do around the Champions League and did around the Euros, lots of data-driven analysis. And they take some of the world's best coaches and they work with the performance analysis team and use Viz Libro to create this content. And the engagement and the elevation that they've received in terms of their viewer engagement for these clips has nearly tripled what their goal were. They wanted to try and uplift it by about 20%, and I think they were nearly last season around about 70% increase in engagement, which is unbelievable. So they're really engaging these different audiences, and so that's been a really nice recent story whereby entity, a big entity, a very, very well-known entity, has come to us with a problem, and we work with them to try and solve that problem, and it's worked really, really successfully.
Something about a picture says 1,000 words and all that, and if you're making that picture better, essentially, especially when it comes to tactical breakdown, people can go on and on explaining, but if the viewer can't connect with it or really see it, but now there are tools, as you mentioned, telestration or different ways that a really good analyst can visualize what they're thinking or they're trying to explain and make it easier for the consumer or the user and fan or whatever it is to understand. And that's really powerful. And clearly it's worked that's what I wanted to hear. A great example. Thank you for sharing that about UEFA. I want to go back to the question I alluded to at the start. Now, I think we've set the context really well about all the cool stuff, or the different things that Vizrt does. I want to get your perspective because, as you said, you worked at Delta Tray, been on the sports media rights kind of thing, and like Delta Tray does a bunch of things. Now working closer with broadcasting, how have you seen the evolution of, let's say, innovation in the broadcasting experience? Like, I mean, how important it is now? Is it the same or more or less viewed as it was 10, 15 years ago? Obviously, there are new technologies and new layers of technology that keep get added on, whether it's AR or XR or yeah, different types of broadcasts like personalized broadcasts, let's say betting specific or kid specific or animated, what like this, it really feels like there is so much happening in broadcast in terms of innovation. Yes, and I'm just looking in from the outside, which is why we're actually doing this series. This whole month, we're talking to different people around broadcast innovation. Am I missing? Was it always the case? There was always like a push to do new cool stuff with broadcasting. Was this no? Now there's a lot more happening than there was before. Just to get your thoughts on how the trend of innovation in this industry you've seen.
Yeah, no, I think it's always been there. It's definitely
Okay.
accelerated. In the past, I was speaking to a colleague just yesterday actually, and just how quickly things are developing. The innovation now for me is, it takes a year to get things through. Things are accelerating at a much faster pace. It's incredible, and it's trying to keep up with that both to be honest from a software perspective and also from a hardware perspective for these broadcasters. In that there are some wonderful technology companies out there producing some amazing tech, and it's just coming super quick. I always find that sport is very much the leader in innovation from a broadcast perspective globally. It's always the major events like a World Cup
Like you're saying, more
or a
than
Euros.
news, more than porn, for example, like because there's
Absolutely.
always been a tech leader. Yeah.
Yeah, no. If you take a step back and look at the major events, that is when you see a big jump in innovation, whether that be new ways of doing production, new ways of doing studios, new ways of producing content or getting more content to the viewer. And, it's even necessarily what we would traditionally, you and I, talk about a studio broadcast. It's the adoption and invention of VAR and the goal line technology and, the semi-automated offside line. These are all broadcast technologies, which on the technology side has advanced so quickly. But then also another sort of, I think, less appreciated innovation advancement is how sports data is being used and really used well. And I'm not talking about just the stats we see on screen. It's about visualizing limb data and tracking data and, how you're bringing an extra layer of storytelling in the live, which was previously never possible. The way technology is now and how fast it is, and the way the industry is pushing vendors like ourselves and service providers to be live with all of it means that innovation is really fast paced. Certainly in the last, I'd say, in 2010, when it was my first major event, I did the World Cup in South Africa. And that was when the BBC first did HD.
Mm.
And now, 14 years later, we're doing UHD, HDR, and things are produced in the cloud. It's unbelievable to see how far the industry has come in what I perceive as such a short period of time to then the innovation kind of pre-2010. It is fascinating.
Interesting. Just on that point about the sports data and the integration into broadcasting, I think it was about I want to say maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the NBA had let's say, a public, let's say, marketing campaign or something about how they were pushing new analytics to the end subscriber. So they were educating the end user or the fan on going beyond just, points scored, rebounds, steals, assists, whatever, the basic stat line into advanced stat line, like what is box score plus minus, or what is true shooting percentage, or things like that. And so they were educating the user and then delivering that content to create that next layer of engagements. So, and you're seeing that a lot more in sports. Formula One, various sports are adopting that additional, like, it's almost like sports thinks that the fan is getting smarter. So they want to give more to the fan. Do you have that feeling as well?
Yeah, absolutely. No, 100%. They're getting smart. The sports organizations and the broadcasters, they need to be smart because they can't alienate one side of their audience.
Sure.
So they need to create, the mainstream world feed, if you will, which is the traditional kind of, right, here it is, here's our footage, here's some graphics. But then for the true sports fan, the fan that wants the data, they really want to get underneath the performance of what they're seeing on the screen, second screen stats feeds or alternative stats feeds, or what Sky have done around Formula One in putting all of the onboard dash cams available and curating something there in their battle channel. It's taking all of this content, all this data is being provided, and these broadcasters are paying for and say, how can we maximize this value and get as much over to the fan as possible? And they are doing that in spades. But I agree, the amounts that they are now trying to get across is great, and it's brilliant to see, and they use a lot of the Vizrt tools for it. But even just as a sports fan, it's great to sit down and say, oh wow, that's a really cool bit of innovation, bit of tech, and that's really engaged me in a different way, or I'm seeing a different part of that sport which I never realized.
I can give you a personal example as a big time fantasy football player, so Fantasy Premier League, player for a long time. I think the first time I saw XG and XGI stats shown on like Monday Night Football, I was like, oh wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Like these are stats that I've been, tracking to find, hidden gems and stuff. And now they're on Monday Night Football. So everybody, I guess, knows about these kind of stats. Okay, I want to talk. You talked about there has been a clear acceleration in innovation. I want to get your perspective on why do you think that is? Like what has happened now? What's changed now? There are a couple of things that I talk about through our channels. I want to get your perspective, but I want to first ask you, why more? Why now?
I think it's the battle for eyeballs. If you kind of look at, maybe if we go back to 2010, if you will, or a few years back, the amount of players in that space were far fewer than there are now. The European sports rights are incredibly fragmented. So you're looking as a broadcaster, you're battling for eyeballs. You're trying to put in the next best thing, or you're trying to make the viewer engaged as much as possible. So they are constantly trying to think of ways to have that one up on the competition. And that drives innovation. Is constantly challenging, as I say, us as vendors and service providers to say, okay, this is where I see the status quo is. I want to be up here for the start of a new season. Here are some ideas. How do I get there? With the amount of players now in the market, that really drives it. And from a technology standpoint and a sort of a sports organizing body perspective, they are looking to create as much value for their rights as they can for the broadcasters, because we've all seen the value of rights is going up and up, and the rights holders want a return in value, so they want to see a better resolution broadcast, they want to see better, more camera angles, they want to have better audio, they want to have this, that, and the other, and that in turn drives innovation as well. And I think that competition in the market, both from a broadcaster and organising body perspective, also within vendors as well and service providers, is really driving that innovation at a rate which is not seen before. Other people entering the market as well. It's not just, I'd say, the more established players like ourselves. There are smaller startups coming in with great ideas, looking at a problem in a completely different way, which is driving us as an established player to kind of rethink how we do things and drive our products. And then, other render platforms, the sort of move of Unreal into the broadcast market. We've adopted Unreal as part of our pipeline, so we can work with them. But that has really sort of pushed on the quality of virtual studios and forced us to elevate our quality of virtual studios to a much higher level. Sort of photorealism and whatnot is now almost a given rather than a nice to have. So all of those different connotations has created this melting pot of innovation that's just accelerating left, right, and center.
Yeah, spot on. And the way I've summed it up in our different bits of content and when we publish is that essentially there is so much, the landscape itself is so much more competitive, and therefore the trickle down and everything around broadcasting, and the broadcasting landscape is more competitive for three main reasons. And I'd like to get your perspective. Number one, the tech companies coming into live broadcasting, Amazon, Apple, now, I mean, these guys weren't messing around with live broadcast rights 4 or 5 years ago, and they're all messing around with it now, Google included. So they come with their wave of and deep pockets. The linear broadcasters, the traditional guys can't sit back. They have to now compete for the same broadcasting rights. And the third thing, which is less spoken about, but also is D2C. Like a lot of the rights holders themselves are trying to play with their own direct offering. The NBA, for example, has had it for a long time. There's a small ticket of their own. La Liga, when it tried something in a couple of markets in Asia, and everybody's kind of just experimenting. So while this cash cow, the live broadcast rights, has existed, and that's getting fragmented, and there are different types of broadcasting rights. You're talking about Unreal Engine, so now I can do, animated broadcast, or I can do different type, which is a separate IP that I can create potentially. which I could sell. There's just so much going on. And then imagine the impact of that, the trickle down effect of that. So interesting. I want to shift the conversation to technology that you find particularly interesting. Like, so now we're talking about there's a lot of innovation. What are the areas that you particularly focus on, either personally or maybe with Vizrt as well as a company?
Yeah, yeah. As I explained, the Vizrt scope of solutions that we have is broad. I think the development of AI is obviously interesting. It would probably not be a sports tech innovation discussion if AI wasn't dropped in there, just because it is very much the buzzword and on the cusp of a lot of conversations and a lot of trade shows and conferences. So we are obviously looking into that. We already have an AI team that's working very hard on that, either working on being able to introduce AI that's produced by the big tech teams, big tech firms into our products, or where necessary, develop something specific for our products in the market. So, AI is something which is of interest, and we'll use it where we think it can really add benefit. And for me, I touched on it earlier, the visualization of sports data is a fascinating area. Coming from Delta Tray, who are a very, very good heritage in sports data collection, how technology is being used to visualize that is really interesting, and the speed of it is what really excites me. I don't think it will be too long before telestration and the way we kind of view telestration is already nearly there, but I think it just needs an extra push. The way we view telestration will completely change, and the way analysts
In
will
what way?
analyze. I think you'll be able to dive into a 3D world with photorealistic avatars, and that's the main
Hmm.
problem. But dive into a 3D world to really analyze the point of view or the viewing field of that player, how decisions were made. That is not far away at all. A few broadcasters do it already, but I think soon it's going to be like that, and you're talking probably third replay, fourth replay could potentially be a 3D
Yeah.
environment where you're going to that, and that's all driven by data and then visualized by engines like our own. So that's really interesting, and there'll be always the continuous innovation around cloud. I don't think cloud's going away. I think that's going to be adopted more and more in either entities, especially down in sort of the tier 3, tier 4 sports will adopt it more to kind of drive their broadcasts wholly in the cloud, but then also looking at the top tier broadcasters and how they will augment or produce additional feeds in the cloud. I think we'll see more innovation there. So they're kind of the three areas where I really see a lot of people pushing, and that's where some of the big tech firms are working as well.
I like how you said third or fourth replay. So, and it's just about adding just the one additional thing about the immersive one. And that one I really love. There are a couple of companies doing very cool things. Sony bought Beyond Sports a couple of years ago, who do basically that. Second Spectrum does that. Like, there are a bunch of cool companies. Thanks, Andy, for that shared perspective. Taking a step back to VizRT, to bring it back home to what's exciting for you guys. Tell me what we can look forward to seeing and hearing from you in the next to 12, 18 months, either from a tech innovation perspective or, I don't know, some new cool stuff you've got coming up?
Yes, I think I mentioned AI, and the AI team here are working hard on bringing that into more of our products. I think that's going to be a very exciting development. We are continually innovating around our core product of Engine, and whether that be around video walls or whether that be around Virtual Studio, improvement in keying, that is a continuous development and innovation around that side. This year is a big year. It's a big sports year. So there have been some big jumps already. Outside of sport, quickly, there was obviously a lot of elections, so that obviously drives our development as well. But then all of that then flows back into sport. And yeah, I think that's probably what we're focusing on more in the next sort of 3 months is that. And then, we have such a wide portfolio that there'll be some releases coming along for all of our products. I think automation will have, especially in sports, is a topic we are discussing actively. It's an area that has been used heavily in news for a very long time, and automation in sport is a natural evolution of that technology.
Can you explain that, please? What do you exactly mean by automation in sport? Like, just the graphics being automated, or?
So the production environment being automated. So what we call sort of production assistant. So automating workflows that would be previously managed by people, actual sort of thumbs in seats, if you will, but not to necessarily replace them. Automation can come in and create a smaller footprint in the gallery, but also from a sports perspective, entities that I've spoken to, they are more around kind of releasing some of that effort, some of those people to actually either enhance the product or go away and do something else to enhance their broadcast and their product. So it's really about, okay, what areas can automate so that there is, it's all fed through from a rundown, and that in turn produces, automates the graphics or the camera cutting, or things that would have been previously done by 2 or 3 people. You can reduce that, and those people can then go and create additional content. I think there are a few broadcasters that are already using automation with production assistance in a very cool way, and I think the rest of the world now waking up to that and saying, oh, actually, all of this that's going on in some sports broadcasters, but all of this going on in news can then be transferred over to my broadcast or my world feed, and how can that enables me to either save cost or increase the quality of my production.
Brilliant. All right. A bunch of AI stuff, some automation stuff, and as you said, major events that Vizrt will be part of. We'll keep an eye out for that. Is there I don't know, a call to action that you can throw out to our audience? I don't know, are you hiring? Are you looking for partners in different regions? Or just in general, if somebody wants to have a chat, they can find you on email, on LinkedIn?
Absolutely, yeah. Feel free to reach out. Always interested to speak to like-minded individuals or companies that are working in the industry. Always looking for partners. Always, they really are, as I said, really underpin our business, because they reach far and wide. So, happy to speak to anybody that has an interest in sports tech or has something to show. This is great to get to talk about innovation and kind of what's out there. And I can't always see everything, so it's really nice if people want to reach out to me. Very happy to have a chat. Talk about what Vizrt are doing, talk about my experiences and understand what they're doing, and if there might be a way to partner up and do something very cool.
Brilliant. Actually, I missed this question earlier when you were talking about like acquisitions and stuff, but maybe if you could quickly talk about, you have like ways that you partner with startups, with service providers that are either down the line or up the chain with Vizrt. Do you have a program of innovation, or as you said, just get in touch with you, and if it kind of works, then maybe you can find something?
Yeah, absolutely. Get in touch, see if there's some synergies there, or, some enhancements where we can help each other. And that's kind of the crux of it.
Yeah.
I really want for it to be a beneficial partnership. Anything like that, any tech that I think is very cool, I'll then pass on to the senior management and say, look, this is eye-catching. We should have a look at it. I always run things past Gerhard Lang, our CTO, because he is a hive of information. So I always run things past him. And then from a service provider perspective, reach out. Let's understand how our tech can help you. There is a huge amount of interest around some sponsorship and commercialization. So we have tools that can really help broadcasters and federations get a good ROI, especially in virtual advertising. So if there's service providers that have broadcasters that are looking to try and get sponsorship out on their broadcast, then reach out to us, or reach out to me. More than happy to chat. And I should mention, whilst I look after sport in general, we have offices globally. So, go onto our website, find out where your local office is, give them a call, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Either way.
Brilliant. We will drop your show notes, your LinkedIn profile, and a couple of links in the show notes, so you can reach out to Andy, or as he said, you can go to the Vizrt website and find your own way in your own region. Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and chat with or talk to our audience. I don't want to make you sound old here, but you are an industry vet, I would have to say. Like,
Okay.
15, 17 years,
Yeah.
if you've been popping around in the broadcasting space, I think that's a fair statement to make. So it is cool to hear your perspective. Thank you for sharing that. Before I let you go, I have one last question to ask. It is my favorite one to do. I'd like to believe, as I said at the top, we're all sports fans first. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what has been your favorite sporting moment.
Oh, this has been a really difficult question. I was thinking about this last night, and honestly, there have been so many unbelievable sporting moments. And I'm a massive sports fan. There are some obvious ones. Being an England fan starved of success, I obviously naturally gear towards our World Cup wins, whether that be the Rugby World Cup or the Cricket World Cups. Jenson Button's World Championship win with Braun was a particular memory, but the one which really stuck with me and often comes back to me, and especially around where we are now in the summer with the Olympic Games happening, Usain Bolt's 100-meter world records were just jaw-dropping. I was lucky enough to see him run in the 2016 Olympics.
Wow.
Going back to him in his prime, his pomp, and it was just incredible. I rewatched him last night, and I'm still absolutely fascinated by the event, how he did it, and the fact that I'm pretty sure he had more in the tank and could have gone faster. But that was one of the reason I picked that event is because it was a real talking moment. It wasn't just to the England fans or just to a particular sport. It was talked about globally. It was talked in the pub.
Boom.
Pub
Yeah.
the next day, it was in the papers. It's still talked. And from a global event, those two world records just stand out head and shoulders above everybody else.
Brilliant. And the fact that you got to see the great man live.
I was very, very lucky. Very lucky.
That is brilliant. Brilliant. Andy, once again, and I love to end on this question because it always brings a smile to
Yeah.
my guest's face and to mine because I love to pick up these moments that I might have, witnessed myself, but to hear how somebody else experienced them is always a bit of fun. Once again, thank you for taking the time and look forward to hearing more from you soon.
Super. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. That is a wrap for another episode, motoring along in our series on broadcast innovation. And it's clear there's a reason we're doing this. There is so much happening, and there's so much innovation in this part of sports. And we'll, I think, bring you maybe one more episode. We'll see the schedule, but stay tuned next week. We'll see you then. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Tech All-Stars podcast with Rohan Malhotra. If you like our show, let us know and leave a review. And if you want to know more about us, check out sportstechx.com, where you can find our latest industry reports and updates. For a deeper dive into all things sports tech, check out our comprehensive database, SportsTechDB, at sportstechdb.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us at SportsTechX on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Join us next time for another insightful conversation with a leader in sports tech.